Today's conversation is with Tim Jensen. He's a Marine Corps veteran. He's also the Chief Brand Officer of Grunt Style Apparel and is the president of the Grunt Style Foundation. If you guys aren't tracking, this is one of the biggest apparel companies in the States, and the foundation was integral in passing the PACT Act, which is the largest toxic exposure legislation in human history, and it's for veterans. We wanted to have this conversation because he's got a new initiative that is focusing on veteran suicides and how we're prescribing it and not doing a good enough job making sure that our veterans are healthy and safe when they get back from deployments. So if you're concerned about long-term exposure to toxins, if you're concerned about the potential effects that SSRIs are having on our mental health, then you're going to want to tune into this conversation. Tim knows a lot about the subject, and we tried to dig into this Gordian knot that we've created with our health for veterans. And not only that, I'm super excited to announce that I'll be working a lot more closely with Grunt Style in the future, creating more amazing content so the veteran community can get a better grip of their own health and make sure that they get off the merry-go-round that is our healthcare system for veterans and prescription drugs and never really getting out of the hole. So you're going to want to stay tuned to the rest of the episode. Love to hear your feedback in the comments. Let's get after it.
Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life.
Hey folks, sitting down with a very special guest today. I'm chatting with Tim Jensen. Tim is a Marine Corps veteran. He went toe-to-toe with Iraqi insurgents in the Triangle of Death. Upon returning home, he struggled with substance abuse and suicidal ideation, but managed to hold the line with his wife's support and went back to school to get a degree in game theory and design. He's now the Chief Brand Officer of Grunt Style and the president of Grunt Style Foundation. Tim, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, man. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, Dave. Thanks for having me. I always like talking to our friends to the north, as I call them, the Jolly Green Giants, right, with your little funky Vietnam uniforms. You guys still have that? Are you guys in the multi-cams yet?
Well, you know what, man? I joined in those. Mike, too. So when I joined, I was like, wait, hold on a sec. These are the uniforms that I've seen in movies from Vietnam. Why are we still wearing these? Yeah, so that wasn't too long ago, man. That was like 2004, I think. I got my first new modern CAD pattern. So yeah, you're absolutely right. But I think our cadets still wear all those old olive drabs, which is like a throwback when you see them. It's wild shit.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's I got the pleasure of fighting with some Canadians in Iraq in 2004, and it was interesting.
Wait, hold on a sec. You fought with Canadians in 2004? In Iraq?
No, I wouldn't say on the line with them, but being in the same areas and chalking it up with them, at Camp Liberty, and everybody's passing through that area. You get to meet everybody. The Australians were a great great group. They, there was a rumor that they had access to a pool at buyout, so it was like land nav trying to find that party. I don't know if anybody ever did, because I didn't.
When you were deployed to Iraq, you were like straight up grunt. You were infantry, like ground pounding, like in the fight. What was your experience like over there?
Yeah. I started the Marine Corps as a amphibious assault vehicle crewman, so an Amtracker, and those are those fancy little death boxes that jump off the back of ships and dump infantry on the beach, right? So it's this 28-ton machine that shouldn't be floating. And dates back all the way to Vietnam. So that was a fun job, but not But I only did one enlistment there. When September 11th happened, I got back into a reserve battalion in Chicago, and I was with the INI. Heard that they were going to deploy. I had the opportunity to jump over to there, but I had to OJ or on the job train or change my MOS to be part of that, because it was the MTO, or how they staff that unit, it only was infantry MOSs that they were allowing. So I had to come in and retrain as an infantryman. So that was really cool. Something I really wanted to do. That was what I was hoping to be when I joined the Marine Corps. But I had some challenges in the beginning, getting that MOS secured.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to Iraq as an infantryman, and that was a lot of fun. I was a squad leader, led a bunch of Marines, and it was one of the most interesting experiences that I had as an adult at that time period, to be in charge of a group of young men that were highly motivated, a bunch of weaponry and and military equipment that was under my charge. So it was cool at 24 years old.
Yeah, like, hey, we're gonna give you, 23, 24-year-old quote unquote kid, millions of dollars worth of equipment to be responsible for, and the lives of men. But you come back home and they're like, dude, I don't know if you could be responsible to handle this mid-level position where you just need to handle like a few paper clips at the office. You come home and you're like, what the shit, man?
Yeah. It was different, right? And I look back at my life at that time period. I'm like, man, I'm responsible for all these things, and I've been a screw up most of my life, and this is a bit weird, but it all worked out, right? I had a lot of fun in Iraq and did a lot of interesting things that I was really proud of, being part of the first Iraqi national election. Right, that was something that I never would have thought I would have experienced, and seeing hundreds of thousands, millions of people trying to vote for the very first time in their adult life, and seeing them all hold their finger up with the blue marker on it, saying I voted, I participated, and honestly seeing them being attacked while they're standing in line for that, that was. We have a lot here in this country, in the United States, I can speak towards, that we take for granted, and that's the way we participate in our elections, right? Seeing that experience and then looking at how we participate in the United States leaves a little bit of wanting, but it was a great experience.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the whole aspect of quote unquote democracy and just the ability to vote, right? That aspect of being over, and for me, my experience was Afghanistan, and they just finished up a vote when we got there. The idea, the concept was so foreign to them in a way that it was interesting to see as like a fledgling quote unquote democracy. Now, as we know, obviously things have gone back to Taliban rule, but that was why I was basically there. Like, that was my idealistic thing to go over to Afghanistan. I believe in my country's values. I think we're doing the right thing. And I think that having the right to vote and being in charge of your own destiny as an individual in the country is an important value for me. Sounds like it's the same thing for you too. And it sounds like that's something that you embody in not only what you did as a soldier, but now what you do as a business owner.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't sign up, to fight wars for politicians, right? I signed up in the United States military to defend what I believe is, the values that, speak for what this country's accomplished, right, over its, very short existence in the human history. And, sometimes that, means that when politics fail, the United States military has to do its thing, right? And Iraq, Afghanistan was, part of those things. Afghanistan more of a response to a terrorist attack, Iraq being more of a response to, possession of weapons of mass destruction or regime change, however you want to skin that. It doesn't matter to me. I was there, I fought in it, and it doesn't change the reasons of what happened there. So I think it's very interesting now that we're several years past the fallout of these conflicts, right? And we're seeing how governments today, Canada, United States, Australia, United Kingdom, are treating the veterans that fought in the longest war in Allied history. So that's it's really interesting to see all that, and I think that once again it's shown that the time that the service member put in is often forgot about once the work is done. And, that's just the nature of the beast. But, I think we're in a position today that, due to social media and the way that, we are able to communicate and socialize, that, we have a bit of an opportunity to change the way, the behaviors, and the status quo of how we treat our veterans, post-conflict or just even post-service. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And that's why I see with our business, right? Grunt Style is a veteran patriotic apparel brand, and with our idea of providing a mission that supports pride in self, pride military, pride in country. With the ultimate idea of know, celebrate, defend the Constitution for the next generation of Americans behind us. That's a very important mission, right? That's not something that you would read on Nike, Reebok, or any other Lululemon. You're not going to read mission statements that speak to that. It's probably some we're going to make the environment better, blah, 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 and all that stuff. And that's cool, right? You believe that. Yeah. But, that's not what our mission is to, make an impact on our community. And the community in which we serve is that patriotic community of people that believe that, in selfless, behaviors that, better the outcomes of the people, that they're surrounding themselves with or their community. So that's what I find important. And how we steer the business, how we steer the foundation, all the impacts and experiences that have previously informed me to where I am today in my life, that has given me a lot of constitution in what I believe and what I go after.
That's really interesting. And for those folks that are tuning in that aren't up to speed, what is a Grunt Style and what is the Grunt Style Foundation, and where do they fit in terms of the veteran community and what you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. Grunt Style, if you're not familiar, is America's largest veteran patriotic apparel company, from shore to shore, uncontested, and it is something that I'm very proud about. Right, we started the company in 2009. My business partner Daniel Alarek, with the idea of taking what was imprinted upon us in our military boot camp and all the experiences of our military career and lifestyle, take those characteristics that are printed on us and take that out to the civilian world. And what better way of doing that than through t-shirts, right? So these are, marketable items that you have to wear, right? Everybody wears clothing in our society, right? So it was a great way of stepping into that space. And over the years, we've been able to build a incredible business that has been, really attracting, global war and terrorism veterans, right? It was a brand for our generation, right? And you've got several brands out there that, that were, existing before Grunt Style, like Ranger Up and, 762, Devil Dog, Sergeant Grid, all that stuff, right? But those really were they were businesses that were selling licensing things, right? Ranger Up was a bit more of a brand, but it was very niched in the sense that it was serving the Ranger community. Mm-hmm. That was fantastic, right? It really started to give signal that there was opportunity, that this community wants goods and product that speaks to them, their lifestyle, and the things that are important to them. So, when Grunt Style came into that scene, man, everybody came to it like moth to flame. And then over the years, we've been just expanding out from, serving that core demographic of GWAT veterans to spreading out to bigger veterans. Now we're, servicing first responders, law enforcement, and patriotic communities around the United States, and just really delivering a message of nothing in regards to politics. We're a very apolitical business, right? The only thing that we support is the Constitution of the United States. And that is, to us, the most important thing in the world.
That's contentious these days, from what I can tell up here in Canada. That puts you in a box. It's like, how dare you defend your own Constitution? It's bullshit.
Right? I say, excuse my language, fuck them to all those people that disagree, right? Because at the end of the day, I raise my hand to swear allegiance to the concepts and ideas of the Constitution of the United States, both foreign and domestic, right? And it is, that's not something that goes away once you take your uniform off, as mm-hmm. men and women that, have, high character. When we put our word to something, that is a bond that exists through the time of our life. And, it doesn't just go away. So it's very important to us, right? So we've been building this brand out for over 15 years. We got over 50 million units in circulation as product.
Wow.
And during that time, we started, we started to recognize how much of an impact that we were making, that we were building a tribe of individuals that were gravitating to this idea of Grunt Style. And, that with that came some responsibility, and we started taking our profits and dumping them into veteran issues or things that were surrounding the American public that, we felt was important to make investments towards. and support and be involved in on the ground. So, an example, in 2013, we went to Washington, D.C. During sequestration, when they shut down all the national malls, and business in the United States had come to a screeching halt. The federal government business, rather. And they put barriers around all of the national monuments. We were working with a group that was bringing World War II veterans into Washington, D.C. This was the 1-year anniversary of the World War II memorial being in operation. And they shut that down. That's not fair to any veterans, right? We should have the ability to access these memorials regardless of the government's operation or not, right? So, we collected a bunch of friends, brought a bunch of people down there, and we liberated all of those monuments, carried those fences to the White House and threw it into the White House lawn. Might have been thought of as an insurrection, but at that time period, we're still in combat. We have a lot of emotions that are happening through the community of the loss of life that was happening from the combat. We're watching our Vietnam generation fade away. We're watching the last of the World War II generation, celebrating their lives. So that was a very emotional moment for everybody. But something that Gruntstyle, we believed that was right, and we had to step into. Mm-hmm. Hurricane Harvey was another example. When that thing came through and devastated the Gulf ports of Texas, we sent down over 18 tons of food and supplies to families here in Texas. My business partner, Dan, went out locally into the communities on boats, pulling people out of the homes. And then we spent about 2.5, 3 months in a city called Westboro and rebuilding that town and made some significant investments, over $200,000 into rebuilding their children's community center. Right. So these are important things for us, which, finally led us to the Grunt Style Foundation. And, from there, we, said, okay, now that we have this opportunity that we can service a wider group of individuals, we have some momentum, we have name viability, what is it that we want to do? So we really separated it into 4 buckets, right? Mental health and wellness, mental health and wellness, transition sustainment, veteran homelessness, and suicide prevention. Right. So all those things, those 4 items is where we put a lot of our attention from the Grunt Style Foundation. We just recently had a merger with the Reverend Warriors, which bolsters our suicide prevention programming and brings a significant audience and membership into the Grunt Style Foundation. We're talking about 15,000 plus members. So we are now leveling up, and we're creating more opportunities for veterans to plug into this movement of reclaiming our mental health and being more involved as a community than any other time in veteran history. Right? Mm-hmm. If you go back in the World War II era, we saw a massive amount of Americans standing up and creating businesses, entrepreneurs, right? There was almost 20 million Americans that served during that time period, right? So you had a substantial audience. Well, the longest war in American history has over 4 million veterans, and we're out there trying to do the same thing. And I think that's what is important, is making sure that the veteran community remains healthy, because a strong veteran community in the United States means a strong United States as a whole. And then being an example for the rest of Americans and saying, hey, this is what right looks like. And, we need to drop our ego and really roll up our sleeves and get back to work on maintaining this idea of the Republic of the United States of America.
I love it. Tim, you brought up a lot of good points there, but the fact that you're so active in making sure that the veteran community remains healthy and that their mental health is put on, a high alert in terms of awareness for not only the civilian population, but for politicians and for obviously the serving members as well. And it's one of your 4 pillars. So with that in mind, you just launched a new mental health campaign. And from what I can see, the tagline is Prescribing Suicides. So this was just launched this month, and I'd love to know a little bit more about what the framework is and what you're intending to do with this new campaign.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. And thanks for asking. This is a really important subject for me. Veteran suicide is a problem in the United States, and I have to imagine that you are having a very similar circumstances in
100%, 100%.
Right. One of the largest problems within our community is the overprescribing of SSRIs and other psychotropics within the combat community, or the combat community. Here in the United States, Brown University just released a report last year that said over 30,177 veterans have taken their lives over the last 20 years, right? And that's in comparison to the 20-year war, right, striking the line from 2001 to 2021. 7,054 combat deaths, right? So the veteran community is taking their lives at a nearly four-time factor than what they're sustaining during combat. That's a problem. When you really start peeling back some of the issue on that, you're starting to see that there are some tangibles that thread through all of these circumstances, right? And there's a lot that is affecting the suicide of the veteran. We are not saying that that these medicines are the sole driver. We're saying that the prescribing of these medicines are becoming an issue, and we are able to connect dots that in people that are taking their lives through the reports that we're getting our hands on. These drugs, these psychotropics, are being found in the individuals at autopsy. Right. So we got a problem. The number of veterans is something more along the lines of 150,000 plus have taken their lives in the last 20 years. Right. And we're talking about, again, we got medicines that, are extraordinarily dangerous when they're being mixed with other medicines. And, what we're really trying to have this conversation around is an education platform, to get people to understand that these medicines are, can be dangerous. They can lead to suicidal ideations. And when we say can, it's more like likely, right? Mm-hmm. Because the overprescribing and the way that they're being working, you're seeing veterans being on this medicine for long periods of time, if not their entire life. That's not what these medicines are made for. Right now, there are certain circumstances that that medically that's happening, and we're not talking about those, right? And we're not even talking about stopping psychotropics in general, right? We're just saying we need to be more responsible on the way that we're doing this by having informed consent, to where the doctor is having a conversation with the patient and saying, hey, when you came in for smoking cessation, we got an opportunity to prescribe you some Wellbutrin, but here's how Wellbutrin will interact with all these other drugs that you're currently taking. As I'm looking at your profile, those conversations aren't happening. And I use my friend that took his life last summer, or last spring rather, as an example of this, right? He went in for smoking cessation. VA, markets that they have these smoking cessation, opportunities within the system. So he went to explore that. He's a very entrepreneurial Chicagoland business owner. Had several businesses that he operated himself. Goes in to better himself, to have more longevity, and a healthier lifestyle. He has a wife, children. Very, very well off. And right after that prescription, a few months later, he takes his life. Like, why? What happened? Right. So we're seeing this more and more. The studies are suggesting more and more that these medicines don't have the value that that they're being marketed as. Right. There's several white papers that are coming out of England, University of Oxford, the Lancet, all these peer reviews that are saying that SSRIs don't have a lot of the value that they're saying. Right. And those are things that we need to be looking at as a community and saying, hey, well, last 60 years, since this medicine's been on the market, what correlations are there, right? What we look back at the Prozac, hearings in the mid 90s in the United States government. And, we hear the horror stories that were coming out of those, circumstances with that drug. Right. And I, during that time period, as a young man, I was, getting prescribed Paxil, a very young age because of, circumstances of, my, it was going on in my life. So a lot of problems, and something that we need to take a very hard look at, and at very least have a better conversation with our primary care.
Hey folks, I just want to interrupt this podcast for a hot minute to talk about skincare. Yeah, I know, not something that you might typically expect from a podcast like this, but skincare for me has been really important ever since I deployed to Afghanistan. Let me explain. You see, while I was deployed, I saw a lot of guys not taking care of their skin. And when they got home, they looked like a leather mitt. I didn't want anything to do with that. So I had a pretty serious skincare routine while I was deployed, but I've always struggled to find the right product since coming back. Well, that's where things have changed. I've recently started using Skin Mason as my everyday go-to skincare product. This is a two-step process and it's for guys. So you take the scrub, you scrub your face, and then you finish it off with the serum that's right here. This two-step system has already shown results and my skin feels a lot softer and looks a lot better from when I first started just a few days ago. Because you're a loyal listener of the podcast, I want to make sure that you're well looked after. If you go to skinmason.com and get your first order today, you're going to get a 10% discount by using the code H2KPOD. I hope you can find a product that works for you and that you can start looking a lot younger, a lot fresher, and a lot harder to kill in the near future. So that's skinmason.com and grab your skincare products today. Fellas, bring it in. Nice and tight. Bring it in. Nice and tight. We need to talk about your... All right, seriously. We need to talk about something that most of us don't want to talk about. That's why I put on my nice blue dress shirt to bring a bit of seriousness to an often hilarious topic. But your sexual health is no joke. Seriously though, sexual health needs a lot more attention than it's been given. Let me go over a few things here. Research has shown that regular sex, what's 1 to 2 times per week, can reduce the risk of cardiovascular mortality by 50%. Bring that one to your wife right now. Lower the risk of prostate cancer by 33% and reinvigorate your mind and body. The problem is 40% of men in their 40s, 50% of men in their 50s, and 60% of men in their 60s experience some form of erectile dysfunction. This is even worse in the veteran community. On top of all this, erectile dysfunction is correlated with a future cardiovascular event and is an early warning sign of a future issue. This is why Dr. Elliott, board certified urologist and friend of the podcast, has created this one-of-a-kind, first in its category, revolutionary device called the Firm Tech Ring. This high-speed tech for your dick will give you real-time data and allow you to see how many nocturnal erections you get every night, which can be a great bit of data that you can bring to your doctor for a future conversation. Not only that, this data could literally save your life. You know, I'm all about improving the health and lives of the veteran community. And that's why I've paired up with Dr. Elliott Justin to provide you with a 10% discount if you head to the link that's here in the description to get yourself your first Firm Tech Ring if you use the code DMorrow at checkout. So head to the link in the description and start tracking so that you can start banging. All right, brother. So go do what you got to do and be one of the first to bring a whole new meaning to being hard to kill. Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And there's a book that I read called Lost Connections by Johann Hari about this exact issue that SSRIs, and he's a reporter, so he was prescribed SSRIs for years. He just went deep and he couldn't come to a conclusion if they were actually beneficial or not, which in my opinion, if you can't determine whether or not there's a benefit to what you're taking, then the obvious answer is you don't take them. Because if the side effects are potentially taking your life, that is a very serious side effect. And yeah. I can't see how that would end up being something that would be prescribed long term. And that seems to be the case. And I think you mentioned it to Mike before on a separate conversation, but like there's kind of like a merry-go-round of you start one treatment with one specific prescription, and then that inevitably leads to another, and to another. And before you know it, like I've had conversations with other veterans on the podcast here that were on like 26 different medications, and they're not even in their late 40s. They're in their early 40s or late 30s. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm curious to know like what your take is on that in terms of how the veteran is kind of used in this. It's almost like a pharmaceutical merry-go-round where it's like, well, we can prescribe them everything. They follow orders. They won't say anything. And so let's just drug them up and we've done our due diligence. Is that kind of what's going on here? What's your take on that?
Well, I'll put a couple things out here. First of all, I'm not a doctor, right? And the things that I'm talking about are coming from informed conversations that I've been having with professionals that are in this field, that are making me smart on the subject matter as I go out there to ring the bell and say, hey, we've got a problem, America or world, and this is what it is, right? So I want to be very clear about that. The other part that I think is important is, when we look at, the way that these things are being marketed into the communities and the cohorts that they are being marketed to. You can look at the history in the United States of America, how the prison population and veteran communities have been used as guinea pigs and test dummies for big pharma in the way that they deliver medicine. There's one very specific instance with the manufacturer of a drug called suboxone, right? When they developed this medicine, which is an opioid abatement drug, to wean people off the very opioids that the same company had brought to market. Right. Let me say that again. To wean them off of the very drugs they had brought to market, the very same company, right? They were testing this on Kentucky inmates in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. When then the Kentucky government said, we're not testing on inmates anymore, so sorry, and the company had to go find another cohort of people to start testing on. And who did they find as a very resourceful group with a large community? It was the Veterans Administration of the United States of America, and they started dumping Suboxone into the veteran community, right? And then here we are, a few years later, in 2022, there's only about 130,000. About 130,000 doctors in the United States are able to prescribe Suboxone. Here we are today with over 3 million that are now able to subscribe this thing. And it is a horrible medicine. It has its values. Sure, it gets people off opioids, but you're going to be on this drug for the rest of your life, putting it in your mouth just so you can, not go back to abusing the very opioid that you're still putting in your body. That's so it's craziness to me that, how the industry, right, and the industry is using these communities to test their medicines with relatively nobody standing in the way saying, hey, you're harming the community.
Based on me knowing where you're coming from and what you've been up to in terms of trying to get veterans to a healthier place, what's one of the things that you think is a alternative treatment that could potentially help a veteran that is kind of stuck in this merry-go-round of prescription drugs, but clearly not getting the result, which is essentially feeling like yourself again, like regaining who you were before service, before you got injured, before you got traumatized, and you're trying to kind of get things back to like that set point where I call it like a youthful exuberance is basically what I wanted to get back to. And I'm very close to being there again, where I just feel it's basically like feel joy again. What are some of your ideas around getting the veteran community back to a healthier existence?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to be very careful on how I answer this because,
of course,
again, this is a very delicate subject, right? It's impacting so many people and so many families, around the world that saying something careless and reckless is not my intent. So I want to make sure that I'm very clear about that. The things that I think are really challenging, in the mental health of the veteran right now is purpose, right? There's that, you come from a very structured position and then you leave that, environment and you come back into the civilian's place where that sense of purpose is no longer there. And that starts really messing with all the inner dialogue that you have with yourself, and that throws you off balance, right? And as you continue off balance, you're going to, degrade in your health. You're going to degrade in your mental spirit. Or your mental faculties. You're just going to see degrading aspects of your life all the way around, right? So, there's things that I would say to begin with, right? Make sure that you're having good conversations with your doctor to see that, make sure that you don't need this medicine, right? Mm-hmm. Again, there is need and then other ways, right? And the other ways I believe is having a healthy lifestyle and looking at holistic, different alternative modalities of treatment, right? So when we're talking about things of like a treatment-resistant type of depressions, or things that, you've gone through and you tried everything, you tried the psychotropics, you tried holistic, you tried this, you tried that, you changed your diet, you changed everything, right? There are alternatives, right? And you can step into that community of alternative medicines and psychedelics, right? There are several medical reports that are coming out in the United States, the studies done by the FDA on psilocybin. In 2023, there were 2 independent studies that were completed that showed psilocybin as a breakthrough modality when it comes to treatment-resistant depression. And we're talking one-time application where the subject is, or the patient is, ingesting psilocybin. In often one case, they are reporting, a better mental outcome, rather in contrary to where they were coming into the medicine. So there is that. There's ibogaine that has extraordinarily high efficacy rates for people that are suffering from addictions, right? Which is a big problem in modern economies around the world, right? We have addictions to alcohol, we have addictions to opioids, we have addiction to illegal drugs, right? Ibogaine has the ability to break that individual free from that dragon. Like, that is an incredible modality of treatment. You have ayahuasca, right? That has the ability to, again, much like psilocybin, address treatment-resistant depression that you are struggling with within yourself, right? And it creates inner dialogue with yourself that brings a lot of the suppressed traumas that you have experienced in your life to the surface and forces you to manage through them. And once you have managed through them, that is liberating to the stress that it is producing on your body, to the way that your brain is synapses in your brain. These medicines have also showed the ability to recreate neurosynapses, neurogenesis, or regenesis, right? Mm-hmm. So it has a lot of positive aspects, and I'm a big proponent of it because today we are so addicted and so tethered to big pharma in the way that we address our mental health, when we have access and the ability to be treating in a far more holistic way that does not introduce poisons into our body in the way that we're currently doing it, and has the ability to cure people in one application. So that, I believe, is worth the time, money, and investment for any government to put their time and attention toward, right? Creating a better, healthy outcome for its citizens. I mean, that just only strengthens the nation.
And Tim, that also requires us to believe that the goal is to actually get us healthy. Because now I'm starting to realize that I don't know if the goal is actually to get us healthy, because that's what's been driving my frustration. It's like, well, if the goal is to get us healthy and fit and back after it, why is the system so hell-bent on us staying sick and unhealthy? So I think that's a whole other podcast, but but further to what you're talking about in terms of government response, is the Grunt Style Foundation pushing the legislators to start looking at psychedelics as a modality of treatment for the veteran population?
Well, I think what Gruntstyle Foundation is doing, right? We're a 501c3, so we are not in the ability to lobby, right? But we are in the ability we do have the ability to educate audiences on, things that, could be a potential modality, an alternative to the way that we're currently treating or addressing things, right? The PACT Act I will use as a great example, right? In the United States and America and into the allied nations who fought in GWAT, right? We're seeing that there's been an incredible amount of death and cancer surrounding the veterans that fought in those wars. And it was largely, being, attributed to these burn pits that were being used at FOBs across these areas of operation. Right now, here we are 20 years, 15 years, 10 years after, right? And people are like dying left and right, getting these exotic cancers at 40 that you often normally wouldn't see, that was something that a lot of people in the United States were tracking. There was a group called Burn Pits 360, Rosa Torres, an incredible gal that was seeing the effects of the war on her husband, right, and started getting involved. She started going after some of these things, right. And where we came into that particular story, we came in to be an amplifier, right. We had an incredibly large audience of veterans here in the United States that we have built with our business. And, it was an incredible time for us to really educate them and give them a call to action by saying, hey, here's a problem. And, it's affecting, veterans in wholesale. And if you were in these areas, you need to, get involved, send a letter to your representative or senator, and we gave them all the means to do that, right? By just putting inserts into, our orders. We started telling people, or sharing stories on a podcast called Gaslighting the Warfighter, which was educating people on the subject matter. Because what we came to learn was the majority of American service members didn't even know what the dangers of the burn pit really was. And when they started to learn, we all knew what was going in it. But when we started to share some of the data of, what the oxygen and the air quality is like when you're burning lithium, right? That's incredibly toxic, substances, and it really started to open people's eyes. So we are more in about educating people and giving them the tools and empowering giving them the tools that they can empower themselves to get into the conversation, be smart about it, and have conversations with their representatives or senators. That's where we live, and that's what we're doing with psilocybin, right? Is we're educating people and mostly psychedelics, right? Psilocybin is one that is just happening to be a good focus in the States. But we're going around and we're educating those in the United States on all the benefits of what psychedelics can do for the average human or the average individual, right? So. And it's been a lot of fun. We've done, all sorts of different interesting things, and, podcasts and content, and, just creating different stuff that we can serve out to a variety of different audiences, and really just be an educator and saying, hey, there are different ways out here that we can address our health, and we don't always have to go through, the doors of big pharma to get that done.
Right. Tim, I want to go back on the burn pits. This is a really important topic that most Canadian veterans, we're not tracking at all.
Yeah.
And because veterans aren't really tracking it, our VA isn't tracking it. What are the numbers like in terms of exposure, in terms of exotic cancers, and in terms of deaths that you can comment on based on what you've seen in the U.S. and based on what the legislation had to work on in order to get the PACT Act passed?
Yeah, that's a great question. The numbers are not, they're not anything that I like, sharing, right? They're rather grim. From an exposure factor, I'll say this, right? If you're in Iraq and you're in Afghanistan, you're exposed. It's 100% exposure, right? Now, the cancers that are affecting individuals, which we have identified, and I say this very carefully, we listed 24 different types of cancers and exotic diseases that we were seeing, right? That is not the end all be all. There are far more out there that we just didn't get into the bill that became law, and hopefully, and we're starting to see the VA starting to include those. They've expanded the list to almost a dozen more diseases and cancers. So that's fantastic to hear that's continuing to evolve. But those what we have seen in the initial numbers is about a third of the forces were coming down with cancer, and most of those being terminal. That's crazy. Like I look at myself, right, and I use the anecdotal evidence of how does this affect me, Tim Jensen, right. I look back at my command, my colonel, my CO is gone. He died of lung cancer. My XO is gone. He died of brain cancer. My best friend, Frank Hazelwood, that I shared a room with, he passed away from lung cancer at, that was in 2012, right? So he's one of the early guys. And there's several people within my battalion that are struggling from cancers, from kidney to colon. I've had friends that are having their colon removed and parts of their intestines because of exotic stomach cancers. It is absolutely crazy. That's just the anecdotal side. And then when we were on the the part where we were trying to go to Capitol Hill and talk with people to get them to listen to us, we started with a group, right? That group, by the time we ended, wasn't as big as it was when we started, because a lot of those people went away, right? And it was a horrible experience, to see some of them die in front of me, right? It's like, what is going on? How are we allowing this to happen? And that was the tragedy of it all. So what is important for everybody that is listening here, if you're a United States veteran, make sure you're going to the VA, get your screening done for the PACT Act, right? You may seem trivial to you, and you may say to yourself, I don't need it, I'm fine. But I promise you that you've been exposed, and you need to just be in the system in the event that something horrible happens to you. For the Canadians veteran out there, that you guys are struggling and you're coming down with cancers that you have no idea, like, where is this coming from? Look to your brothers to the south, man. Like, we did it. We ran that gauntlet to get it done. I work with Dave and Mike on a lot of things that they're trying to get accomplished. I know that these two warriors are trying to run something similar in the country of Canada, and it's important because we shouldn't have to worry about dying from an event that we did with our defending our country and defending the ideals of what we find important, and then come home from that to die years later. I've watched more friends die from cancer and suicide than I've seen die in combat, and that is just not acceptable to me.
No, you're absolutely right, Tim. And we accept the risks of going to war.
Yeah,
it's just what we do. And some folks will say, "Well, quit crying about it. You knew the risks." Okay, yeah, we did. I accepted the risk that I could get shot. I accepted the risk I could get blown up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, I did not know the risk of burn pits. I did not know that there was going to be long-term potential side effects from literally burning heavy metals, shit, everything that I got to breathe in every day because I was on a small outpost in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. So having the VA just say, hey, look, we recognize this is a potential risk for your long-term health. And if anything happens, we'll attribute it to service, would go a very long way, because I've seen some heartbreaking stories in some veterans groups here in Canada about exactly what we're talking about here. And they're not attributing it to service because it's 5, 6, 10 years after their time in Afghanistan or Iraq, and they can't put 2 and 2 together. And that's heartbreaking. So yeah, Tim, I really appreciate you sharing that, because 1/3 of all of us exposed in America, if I'm not correct, my math, I used to be a math teacher, but that's close to a million. Yeah. If you said there's 4 million GWAT veterans, that's close to 1 million. Those are preposterous numbers. So that would imply, I think we had 600,000 roughly, in terms of GWAT veterans here in Canada. So, quick math, that's 100. Well, sorry, a third. That's 200,000, right? 200,000 potential cases that would need screening and would potentially be affected by exotic cancers or weird diseases. That's a substantial amount, because we got a substantially smaller population here for us to bear. So I'm hoping that chatting with folks like yourself, bringing the two worlds together a little bit closer and not having to reinvent the wheel in order to get legislation passed is something that we can collaborate more on down the road. And folks, if you're listening too, like, this is where we need the action. This is where we need kind of people to get activated and start pushing this ball further down pushing down the field. So the burn pit legislation, psychedelics, there's a lot on the agenda. Like, that's a lot going on. What else is Grunt Style and the Grunt Style Foundation up to these days in terms of helping out the veteran community and also producing amazing apparel for not just the veteran community, but anybody that is like a veteran community adjacent for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, there's a lot, right? I feel like I'm busier than a one-legged man in an ass kicking contest sometimes. I don't know what's up or down, but I have an incredible team of people that I get to surround myself with on a daily basis that is as passionate as I am, or if not more, on the subjects and the ideas of what our business can do and what our foundation is able to service. Right. So, we'll continue on these conversations of suicide prevention. We've got a big initiative coming up. We're working on this war cry for change, which is the overprescribing that's happening within the veteran community. That is a campaign that we'll be running for a very long time. In September, we're going to be focusing on suicide prevention. That's the big September is Suicide Prevention Month in the United States. So we're running a rather large content schedule and plan for that month, and I'm really, really excited about that. Also, in the month of September, the Grunt Style Foundation is going to be putting on its first integration workshop, which is going to be a 3-day festival of opportunity, bringing all sorts of veteran VSOs together, organizations, integration, people from the psychedelic community. We're bringing it all together and mashing everybody into one little spot. It's going to be a camp out. You can come and camp with us for the 3 days and go around to all these different workshops and, get certifications and patches and, really an engaging opportunity for the community to understand what it is that we're really trying to do and accomplish. So we're really excited about that. And, the Grunt Style business is continuing to grow, and, we really continue to set the standard when it comes to patriotic apparel in the United States. And create opportunities of, again, showing and demonstrating that, politics is not what drives people, right? Politics is garbage. At the end of the day, right, we can all come together and really embrace our neighbors, right? Because, we're not what the media wants us to think that we are. And we have the ability to make a change and be more than what we are today, right? And, we don't have to look very far on news or, around the world and seeing some of the strife that is happening. And it's a little bit, it's sad, right? It's sad to see the dangers that are encroaching upon the world today, the sheer amount of life that's being lost everywhere. Right, there's a better way, and and America can lead that, and we just need to, stand up and put aside our differences that are just manufactured. So, that's where I think the company, can stand in and really be that driving force, and again, lead by example and focus on the things that are important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an important message, Tim. This concept that we have these differences that are just insurmountable, and because we're on team red or team blue, sorry, we can't hang out. That is so ridiculous. And it's been amplified right over the last 15, 20 years, as we've seen that it gets to the point where you kind of shake your head and wonder, well, why why would I get a message that for some reason, team blue or team red is somehow doing things that are contrary to what I want, which is essentially, I want a healthy life, a healthy family, and a healthy community. And we're all striving for the same thing, man. And these small differences are literally that, small differences, because we ultimately want the same things. And that's how I grew up, man. And it's not things haven't changed for me. And it's unfortunate to see just the lack of connection on a one-on-one basis, because we've resorted to our devices that keep us at a distance. But as soon as you go face to face with somebody and you're having a conversation and you have some differences, it doesn't turn out into a bloodbath. It goes, hey, you know what, man, I don't really agree with you on this point, but you know what? We're still brothers. We can still hang out. And there's a multitude of things that everybody disagrees on, but at the end of the day, when you're hanging out and, you're giving high fives and you're fine.
You look at one thing that COVID showed us, right? Whatever your opinions are in COVID it is of no consequence to me, right? But the thing that I took out of COVID was that, the mask that we have conveniently been wearing as individuals was ripped off, and it really exposed the mental health of all of us, right? And we are all struggling. It doesn't matter where you live and what country that you are a part of, and we are all experiencing, living in this world, in this experience, and there's a level of struggle that is happening with all of us. right? And we don't need to make it that hard. We can be, we can lean on each other and, provide, opportunities for other people, and be a hand up for another, right? Because once you put yourself into that position where you're doing more for others and less for yourself, good things come to you, because that's what the universe wants us to do, is be loving towards each other and helping our neighbor, right? Not being opposed to them. Now, I'm not crazy or living in a world of make believe that there is not evil in this world as well, and evil needs to be stamped out with a fierce fist and
with a war hammer,
prejudice. So I'm not scared. Right.
Tim, I really enjoy your philosophy and your take on things, and just your drive to want to see change. I think that's the most important thing, right? Is not sitting on your hands and being like, well, what can I do? Like, you're a grinder, you're a grunt. It's in the name of the company. It implies that you're willing to put in the work. And I really appreciate that. And I really like the brand in of itself, just because of what it stands for. And before we sign off, Tim, what are some words of wisdom that you'd like to share? And also, how can folks get a hold of you and get some more information on the foundation and Grunt Style itself?
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think I'll leave you with this: is I'm nobody special. I was a former Marine that went and fought for my country. Came back from that, did some time as a union carpenter in the city of Chicago, and luckily fell into this role at Grunt Style. Right, I started folding T-shirts at this company, and now I have the privilege of leading a business that is doing incredible things, that it makes incredible impact. I recognize that every day, and anybody can do this. Anybody can stand up and stand up for what they believe in, right? I'm nobody special. It didn't take, it was just somebody taking that first step at the PACT Act and saying, you know what, this is bullshit. And they're going to run us out of town and we're not going to get anything passed. And I just raised my hand and said, well, let's just sit on the steps until they pass the bill. And that's what we did, right? Everything in my life has been just take that first step, and everything else will fall into place. Like, it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail. But if you are not taking that step and you're not putting yourself into a position of being uncomfortable, then are you really, experiencing what this gift of life really is? And that's to go out doing incredible stuff. And I think we all have the capability of doing that.
And go ahead.
If you want to find out where we do conduct our business, you can go to gruntstyle.com, find us on all the social media channels that you serve, and please check out gruntstylefoundation.org. See all the great things that the foundation is involved in, the impacts that we're making within our communities. We would love for you to make a donation and help us support the very things that are important to our communities. Every dollar counts, and every dollar goes right back into our community to make sustainable impacts. That's something that we're very, very proud of.
That's amazing. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that the only reason why we're chatting here is thanks to Mike, who's in the background right now, helping produce the show. He sent a bottle of Crown Royal when you guys were on the stairs of the Capitol, fighting for the PACT Act to get passed. And it's amazing how taking a small action just out of kindness to be like, hey, we're showing some support here, and to lead to us then meeting you in Vegas and then chatting at the gala dinner, realizing that, oh my God, we got a lot of alignment and a lot of things that we're up to the point where now we're chatting on the podcast, and we're hoping to bring some major changes up here in Canada, thanks to you taking action, and then Mike taking action on the backside is pretty cool to see. So Mike, thanks so much, man. This has been a hoot. And thanks to Crown Royal. If you want to sponsor the podcast, hey, I'd love one. But Tim, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, sharing your wisdom and sharing your knowledge. And I'm sure the folks here are really going to benefit from your insights. And folks, don't forget, tune in here for another episode every week, and train hard, fight easy. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.